Good morning. Happy Sunday to all of you. It's time to wrap up a busy 49ers draft season. 2 weeks ago, we were wrapping up the actual 2022 NFL draft. The 49ers added 9 players through that. Then they tacked on another 14 through undrafted free agency. And then we waited a couple weeks. And the rookie mini camp was our first chance to meet a lot of these players in person. All 23 rookies were there. I made the YouTube live yesterday, just briefly summarizing what had happened. We're going to talk about it in more depth today, and we could watch one of the videos that I posted from that 49ers rookie mini camp. This is quarterback Brock Purdy throwing on Friday. We'll talk a little bit about that, about Brock Purdy's arm, about what he might be able to bring the 49ers that we don't quite know yet, but nice quick release. Looks a little bit like Jimmy Garoppolo out there. I thought some people made that comparison on Twitter. There is 49ers running backs coach Anthony Lynn replacing Bobby Turner at that position for at least this season as Bobby Turner rehabs from knee surgery. Anthony Lynn working with 32, Ty Davis-Price. That's going to be the first guy catching a rather ugly pass here from Anthony Lynn, but that's Ty Davis-Price, 49ers rookie running back. You could tell some beef on Ty Davis-Price. He says he's going to run this season at 220 plus pounds. And that's big news for the 49ers because running backs for Kyle Shanahan have typically been closer to 200 pounds. There's Josh Hokett, who is lining up next to Lynn, and then they decide to scrap the play. Hokett, second-year 49ers player. He was eligible for the mini camp because he did not see time on the active roster last year. 86 is Danny Green here, working with new 49ers wide receivers coach Leonard Hankerson. You see a little bit of Danny Green's get off, but the 49ers wide receiver position here, we're only allowed to film a few minutes of practice, and I wasn't able to get Danny Green in a full sprint. During the actual team drills of practice, though, Danny Green ran down a couple deep passes, was able to blow the top off the defense like he said he wanted to. Donovan West, undrafted free agent center for the 49ers, 61. He's first in that drill. You see 63, Nick Zakel over there. 77's Alfredo Gutierrez. Gutierrez is the 49ers international exception. Like Josh Hokett, spent last season on the practice squad, so was eligible for the rookie minicamp, even though he's technically in year 2. And 74, Joe Staley's number there at Spencer Burford, 49ers fourth-round pick out of UTSA. Take a look at the linebacker position for the San Francisco 49ers. This is a quick look. Johnny Holland was back. That was nice. Has been dealing with multiple myeloma, has been receiving treatments. There's the second-round draft pick, Drake Jackson. Now, Jackson in 77, that's Kevin Atkins out of Fresno State. You could tell that's a lonely defensive line group with Chris Kasarik. There's only 2 of them. Only 2 defensive linemen got to work with Chris Kasarik, so they both got tired because you could see Kasarik there barking, pointing at the pad. Attention to detail is even greater for these 2 players from Chris Kasarik because there's only 2 of them. Normally, Kasarik is working with upwards of 14 guys in that defensive line room at practice. But Atkins got a lot of attention, and so did Danny Green. So that was the look into 49ers rookie minicamp. That video on its own is on my YouTube channel. So like, subscribe, do all that you need to. And then, of course, I know a lot of you have already read the practice review here, and I put the practice review. Let's get this one up there for you guys. I want you guys to be able to check out the Athletic, and I am having trouble getting it up there, so we'll do it in just a second. First, let's talk some 49ers. I was going to take some questions. I'll put the link up there for the piece on the Athletic. That's going to be in the chat section for you. A lot of you have already subscribed. It's $1 a month. It talks a lot about Danny Gray, talked a little bit about Brock Purdy. I talked about some of the tryout players. The 49ers had a good 13 players in there on a tryout basis. Now, they have a full 90-man roster right now. So if the 49ers do decide to sign anybody that tried out for them or decide to sign another veteran free agent, they're going to have to waive or release somebody else on the roster. They're at the limit. Full 90-man roster this offseason. I know those of you who have been following along on the Athletic on this channel over the course of the past few months know that it's been a big building effort to get to this point because right after the season, a lot of contracts expire. You sign some guys to reserve futures deals, which is just a 1-year contract essentially for the offseason, but you're still way short of the 90-man limit. So you have to build up to the 90-man limit. You're signing players left and right. You're drafting players. And then obviously you ink those undrafted free agents. And finally, after months of roster building, the 49ers have reached the point of this 90-man roster, which brings me to a great point that actually Mike made. Mike does some of the production for the channel, does such a great job with some of those thumbnails. And, Mike said, I think for the 49ers, this is more about the 90-man roster than the 53-man roster. And he's absolutely on to something. It's definitely not just about the 53-man roster when they have to cut it down right before the season, before week 1 in September. Because even when you do cut down to the 53-man roster, you're in a situation where you have the practice squad. You have weekly flex call-ups, right? So technically it's like a 55-man roster. But with the practice squad and the way it is now, it's expanded now to 16 players. And with the interchangeability that you see with some of those practice squad call-ups and obviously with injuries over the course of the season, you need far more than 53 competent bodies to absorb the marathon of an NFL regular season. And it truly is a marathon now that it's 17 games. One of the stats that I bring up a lot is the 49ers played an NFL record 12 road games last year when you count it the regular season and the playoffs. No team has ever played 12 road games until the 49ers did last season. And the 49ers also tied a franchise record with 20 total games last season. And I'm not even counting the preseason. And of course, to get those 3 preseason games in, so the 49ers had 23 games last year. I mean, we're starting to turn into a college basketball schedule at that point, right? 23 games. To be able to absorb all of that, to play all the snaps, to get all the pitches you need, right? If you want to liken it to baseball and pitching, you better have a lot of arms. You better have a lot of bodies. And depth of that 90-man roster is extremely important. It's not just about the 53. It's about the quality of the 90. And what the 49ers have tried to do is expand the depth and bolster the depth at every single position. Maybe in a bit I get that roster spreadsheet out, but wanted to talk about everything today. Obviously, rookie minicamp is over. The 49ers also, that 2022 schedule is out. So if you go ahead and check out the Athletic and prior videos here, I broke down the 2022 schedule. Overall, tough for the 49ers. I mean, but we already knew that it was going to be tough because we knew they were playing the AFC West this year. We know the league has a lot of parity. I discussed the travel a little bit. I think all things considered, logistically, that's what we found out this week. It's a manageable schedule for the 49ers, but opponent-wise, it's going to be tough. There's no way to dance around the fact that they're going to be challenged in this 2022 season. And there was one piece of commentary this season, this past week. It was on Twitter Spaces. Fred Warner's confident that Deebo Samuel is going to sign a new deal with the 49ers. And I could read you Fred Warner's comments right here. I know that this team knows its value in Deebo Samuel. I know that Deebo loves the team that he plays for. I know the type of teammate, the type of player he is in that locker room, the amount of love that we have for him, that he has for us. So I think it's just a matter of time before something gets done. I'm here for him, and I know we all care about him over here in this building, and yeah, that's all that I got to say about it. So all I have to say is I told you so on this front. I mean, Deebo Samuel never had leverage in this situation. The 49ers had ultimate leverage in this situation. Deebo Samuel might have been able to nudge things in a direction or two if the 49ers were willing to play ball. But the 49ers weren't willing to play ball. The 49ers weren't going to pay him right away just because he demanded a trade, and they weren't going to trade him right away just because he demanded a trade. They weren't going to treat him like the Tennessee Titans treated A.J. Brown and traded him to the Eagles. Again, over and over, I said that Deebo, when he was on the field, the 49ers offense saw 4x plus efficiency than when he was off of it. From so many vantage points, he was just so valuable to the 49ers that it would have been complete suicide for this team to just trade him away. You don't do that. This is the type of foundational player that you work out a contract with. Now, the 49ers, when Deebo Samuel demanded that trade, or maybe we should say maybe when his agent, Tory Dandy, demanded that trade, was hoping for a quick payday, was hoping that the 49ers would panic into either trading him to somebody willing to give him that quick payday, or that the 49ers themselves would just go away from their typical negotiation pattern, knee-jerk, and give him all the money that he wanted immediately. But the 49ers held firm. They didn't do that, and now Deebo Samuel has re-entered the same negotiation course that George Kittle had to go through after year 3, and that Fred Warner had to go through after year 3. So Fred Warner speaks from experience. Fred Warner knows that negotiations like this can start a little bit acrimonious and that they can take time. But this is business. This is how negotiations work. And ultimately, I've written so much about the Deebo Samuel contract situation. All of it's had this similar theme. All of it's played out this way, right? And I think that the 49ers and Samuel will reach a deal sooner rather than later. And hey, that might mean right before training camp. And if that's the case, then the 49ers don't care. He's not missing any games. He's not missing any time. OTAs are important for Trey Lance. Would you want to have Deebo Samuel out there? Of course. It seems like he's on better terms with the 49ers now than he was just a couple weeks ago. So maybe we will see Deebo Samuel out there at OTAs even without a new contract. Maybe he'll be in the building. Maybe he won't be partaking in practice. I don't know. That's all to be determined. But I do know that the 49ers have leverage because Samuel's under contract for 2022, and then the 49ers can tag him after that. And I also know that it's in Deebo Samuel's interest to sign a big deal with the 49ers because they will offer one this offseason if they haven't already. But negotiations for the two sides can take some time. Anyway, let's talk some 49ers football. Let me answer some of your questions. I know you probably want to hear about Brock Purdy from rookie minicamp on Friday. I know you probably want to hear about Danny Gray and how fast he looked. And, some of the tryout players, too. I know there's interest in that regard. All right, so let's talk. Questions. I'll give you guys a little bit of time. Do you think the roster size will eventually increase with the additional game? Right now, there's a lot of flexibility in that 53-man roster. 53 is just a number right now. So I don't think that it really needs to because these teams can maneuver and cut and release and promote players however they want to. So it's one of those situations where I think the NFL ultimately will do something to get more guys paid, to get more guys on that 53-man payroll because the players' union's going to want it, but I don't think it necessarily has to happen. No, the draft picks aren't signed. I don't think a single one of the 49ers draft picks is signed yet at this point, in fact. So that's going to happen here over the next couple months, but those guys are allowed to be there. Undrafted free agents had to sign before they took part in rookie minicamp. So the 49ers signed all 14 of those guys the other day. Can you tell us how two veteran tight ends looked in minicamp, Daniel Brown and Troy Fumagalli? Brown made a catch. Fumagalli made a couple catches, but Fumagalli is a multi-year veteran. That guy was with the Patriots for a while. I think that guy has 5 years of service time in the NFL. 6'6", he was tall. There was a throw where Brock Purdy threw a little bit too high, and it went off of Fumagalli's fingertips. I'm like, that's a tough guy to overthrow because he's 6'6", big body. And the 49ers may indeed be looking to add another tight end into the room, and they want somebody who could block. They want somebody who can, who has that ability to go out there and, not be a rookie, not be a Charlie Werner type, that you had to develop for a year. And Werner has developed into a good blocker, I thought, especially down the stretch run of 2021. He replaced Ross Dwelley in that situation. But with any rookie, to develop that man strength is going to take a little bit of time. So an addition like Fumagalli, a veteran tight end who's 6'6", who's got that girth, who's got that size to immediately be that wide tight end and bolster the running game, that's somebody who I think the 49ers might be interested in signing. So we'll see what they do moving forward. Again, they're at 90 of 90 spots right now. Can Alfredo Gutierrez be a backup in 2022? I highly doubt it. He is the definition of a roster long shot. If you look at Alfredo Gutierrez, take a look at that video. I mean, the guy, he's obviously huge. I try to add this video to the stream. We'll get fast forward to the part where we see Alfredo Gutierrez with the offensive linemen. Here we go. Let's take a look at all the offensive linemen working one more time. Alfredo's 77. He's there on the left. You could tell how big he is compared to the other players. But he doesn't move as well as the other guys. And the 49ers, they're going to prize movement over everything else. But boy, man, if they could ever develop Alfredo Gutierrez into somebody who could move as well as some of their other tackles, he's there on the right there working with Spencer Burford. Yeah, then you'd have an all-pro. But I think for the outside zone, for what the 49ers are trying to do, they just don't have the type of movement that they would want from Alfredo Gutierrez. But they obviously invited him back as their international exception. They think that he's great for that locker room. good energy, and he's a positive addition to that 49ers 90-man roster. But I don't think that he's going to be on that 53-man roster for the 49ers in 2022. Yes, Vic Fangio was at rookie minicamp. Fangio lives in Florida, but he's in California quite a bit, travels across country quite a bit. Obviously not the coach of the Broncos anymore. Essentially taking the year off right now as the current situation stands. And you have to remember that the 49ers have D'Amico Ryans as their defensive coordinator. He was already flirting with some head coaching jobs this offseason. If D'Amico Ryans is another big year as the 49ers DC, he's going to get hired away in 2023. And that, of course, will mean that the 49ers have a vacancy at defensive coordinator. And if Vic Fangio, who's been developing a relationship with the current 49ers staff here over the past couple of months, if he's still available in 2023, maybe the 49ers bring him in as their defensive coordinator. It's totally possible that we see a reunion to the Harbaugh era, right? The Harbaugh era saw Lord Fangio as that defensive coordinator from 2011 to 2014. Followed Jim over from Stanford, where Vic also installed the 3-4 and made a hell of a defense. So, obviously Vic's been a 3-4 coach. The 49ers are 4-3 defense right now, but the 49ers defense has hybridized. The 49ers defense has morphed, I think, into a multiple unit. It's not just that Seattle style 4-3 that happened back there. It's just the doorbell ringing down the driveway, but it's not just the 49ers Seattle style 4-3 that Robert Saleh initially implemented back in 2017. This is a unit that's not just playing cover 3, that can, I think, hybridize its fronts in ways that weren't possible just a couple of years ago. And I think if you bring Vic Fangio into the mix now, I mean, they talked to him a couple months ago. They brought him to rookie minicamp. Maybe we see him at OTAs. Maybe the discussions of how his 3-4, how his style of defense can be meshed, can be hybridized with what the 49ers are potentially running in the future. Maybe those talks can pick up some steam. So it's always smart to be looking into the future as far as building a potential coaching staff. What the 49ers had to replace like 10 coaching positions this past offseason. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how much of a pain in the ass that was. I mean, there were so many interviews he had to do, so many different portions of the staff and the relationships and how those guys work together that he had to consider when building the staff. And Shanahan's happy with the staff right now. He thinks that there are some things this staff might even be able to do better than it did last season. But he also, I think, learned throughout this process and has learned over the past 5 years that it's always good to get a head start on this kind of stuff. And if a guy like Vic Fangio is just sitting around traveling, having a good time, not being a coach for a year, you might be able to get a good start on, potentially being able to replace D'Amico Ryans if he does become a head coach. Yes, Vic Fangio is a good defensive coordinator. Any inside information on Kevin Atkins, defensive tackle from Fresno State, inside rusher? Yes, he is a defensive tackle from Fresno State. We saw a little bit of Kevin Atkins, and I could go back to this video right here. We'll fast forward to the defensive lineman working. That's Chris Kasarik with Drake Jackson. But if you look to the right, 77, that's Kevin Atkins out of Fresno State. DT played there under Tedford, under Kalen DeBoer, right, who succeeded Tedford, and then they brought Tedford back. But Kevin Atkins is a nice big body. I'm guessing that the question comes from the Central Valley, so shout out to the 559. I'm coming on to the nightly news on ABC 30 tonight in Fresno, by the way, so be sure to check that out. I'll for sure be talking about Kevin Atkins. I'll for sure be talking about Josh Hokett, who was also at this mini camp. But that's Atkins. You could see it's a big body, and you could see he's got some spring there. Chris Kasarik making him be patient. And that's the end of the video. But Atkins, 77, defensive line depth. Yes, 90-man roster depth. It's going to be tough sledding to find a spot on that 49ers defensive line if we're talking 53-man roster, of course, because the 49ers are just so loaded along the D-line. And this is the way that philosophically they're built. They don't care if they have an overflow of bodies along the D front because they feel that, A, yes, there's going to be injury attrition, but B, they feel there's going to be a way to figure out how to carry these guys on the roster. And if not, then at least the 10th guy that does make the 53 is really, really good. They'd rather have very, very good 8th, 9th, and 10th guys on the 53 than only 7 good guys on the 53, because the 49ers win with strength and numbers up front. They win when they wear you down. They have an alpha group, they have a Bravo group, and they have a turbo group up front. It's three waves of guys. And if that turbo group, or if that Bravo group is not as strong as it needs to be, well, then teams are going to be able to expose the 49ers because Nick Bosa can't be out there for every single snap, right? Last year, DJ Jones couldn't be out there for every single snap. This year, I know it's going to be Kinlaw. You need to keep these guys fresh. It's like managing a pitching staff, like managing a bullpen. So it's really important that 10th spot of that defensive line is just as strong as number 6, really. And in all essence, that's what you want it to be. All right, more questions. Calvin Turner Jr., did he impress or showcase himself well? Personally rooting for him to make the practice squad. It's tough for me to evaluate every single tryout and everything because we're only in there for one practice without pads at rookie minicamp. Well, a lot of this is going to be how guys process stuff in the film room. So just to give you an honest answer, I thought everybody, in general, I didn't think guys were in as great of shape as they're going to be in a couple months, which totally makes sense. It's May right now. Just like to change the subject of the player really quickly. But if you looked at Drake Jackson, he had his hands on his helmet there after just a couple Kaseric drills. And I get it. He was on 14 pre-draft visits. He was, just going through the car wash right now, basically physicals, interviews, everything. And he reports to the 49ers. And of course, he's going to be a little bit hired on his first practice. So it's just so hard to glean anything from rookie minicamp, especially since when the media is there, even then, Kyle Shanahan's not going to want to expose too much of his potential playbook. So, I got to see Brock Purdy run a few quick out, throw a few quick out patterns and loft a couple bigger passes downfield. Zip on the passes look fine, but can I delve more into it? No, I'm just not able to because we're not given enough information. So, A, I know that Danny Gray is fast. B, I know that the 49ers need to get in better shape, which they will, which every team deals with at this point of rookie minicamp. And C, I know that I'm excited for OTAs because now this whole roster building process is done, essentially, right? And now you go into the roster formation process. You have your clay, and now you mold it moving forward. So it's, asking about specific players. Yeah, I could talk about Danny Gray. I could talk a little bit about Brock Purdy, but I'm not going to sit here and just make these overarching proclamations about players just for clicks, right? Because I wish I could answer every single question about every single player, but not even the 49ers can do that at this point. We're just way, way too early in that process. Mr. Corey thinks the 49ers are going to go 13-4. Some people were giving me a hard time because I said when the 49ers schedule came out, I said they're going to go 9-8. 9-8 was my prediction. Guys, I suck at predictions because everybody said, if we were good at predictions, we'd all be millionaires or billionaires because we'd be betting on this all in Vegas. My main point is that the 49ers play a tough schedule this year. And I think they're going to be a lot of close games because that's what the NFL is all about. And I think there are going to be some growing pains with Trey Lance at quarterback, even though obviously I love the prospect of Trey Lance at quarterback developing into something, that's into stardom for the 49ers in the future. So I could see anything from 13-4 to 9-8 because you're playing so many toss-up games. So it's just a matter of how many of those toss-ups the 49ers have fall in their favor. How quickly can Trey Lance become comfortable in crunch time? How well do they pass protect for him? That's all correlated to it. And how much, of the load can the defense and the special teams carry early in the season when Lance is presumably going to be undergoing some more of those growing pains? So I think your prediction is a valid one. I think 9-8 is a valid one. Hell, 8-9 could be a valid prediction. It's really tough to tell because the margins in the NFL are so thin. What I do know is the 49ers have an eminently deep roster. I do know that they have invested in special teams, which is a weakness last year, which I think should help them, especially if they need the special teams and defense to carry a bit more of the load moving forward. And I do know that defense is deeper than it was last season, from D-line to linebacker to secondary, where Jason Verrett is just icing on the cake this year instead of a piece that you have to depend on. I do think that the 49ers have managed to build a better unit. Now, the big wild card is Lance. The big wild card is the offensive line. Yes, they invested in some rookies in that front. How quickly will they develop? How quickly, is Alex Mack coming back? Making a schedule prediction before Alex Mack has decided whether or not he's going to retire is really, really tough for me, right? So there's a big, broad range right now, but I do know the 49ers have a deep roster that I think should contend. And even at 9-8, you're going to contend, right? Because even if you predict 9-8, You could sneak in a couple more wins. You could go on a surge like they did at the end of the season last year. You could finish 11-6, 10-7. You'd be right in that mix. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. Now, I'll say this. How the 49ers start will be significant this year because the first two games do look manageable. They're 6.5-point favorites over the Chicago Bears in week 1. And then the Seattle Seahawks, the shell of the Seattle Seahawks, right? They don't have Bobby Wagner. They don't have Russell Wilson. That's the home opener for the 49ers at Levi's in week 2. I think you need to start this season 2-0 if you're the 49ers, or you're going to have some trouble. But they started last season 2-0. They ran into the trouble then, but they were sure happy they started 2-0 once they, went on that deadline pressure run because they needed every single win they can get. The other factor are injuries over 17-game season, and not all teams have depth. Exactly. So the 49ers have tried to build as deep of a roster as possible. We'll see how they navigate throughout the 2022 season with that deep roster. I do think they have a lot of things moving in their favor. But at the end of the day, it's going to be about the quarterback. Like Trey Lance is going to have to be money for the 49ers if they want to win the Super Bowl next year, right? If they want to go deep into the playoffs next year, they're going to have to get a stretch of really good quarterback play. The 49ers got a stretch of really good quarterback play from Jimmy Garoppolo in 2022. There was that 6-7 games in the middle of the season where he was playing really, really well. Then he got hurt against the Tennessee Titans, and they were leaking oil offensively down the stretch. Deebo was so big in the playoffs. The defense, the special teams was opportunistic against Green Bay. And, they made it all the way to that NFC title game, almost won. It was 20-17 against the Rams, but they weren't healthy enough, especially the quarterback position, to push it through all the way to the Super Bowl, which is a big reason why Trey Lance is likely to take over for Garoppolo, because of the health. The health of Garoppolo reared its ugly head way too often for the 49ers to be comfortable, including after that good stretch of football last year. First, it was the finger or the thumb, and then it was the shoulder. It was tough. And, health is going to be correlated to how well you protect the quarterback as well. And it's worth noting that Trey Lance suffered 2 injuries last season, right? The finger and then the knee against Arizona. So the 49ers coaching staff is going to have to protect Lance both by its play calling, and B, that offensive line is going to have to do a better job pass protecting for the 49ers. And all this is going to be tied into how the 49ers are able to navigate the season. Bigger set of eyeballs and scrutiny on them, Kinlaw or Banks? I think Banks, because the offensive line to me doesn't have as much proven depth as the defensive line. So Banks has a huge role to fill alongside the center position, right? Probably at left guard. If the 49ers, because they've lost Laken Tomlinson, Daniel Brunskill wasn't a great right guard last year. Banks better show up, or a lot of the domino effect of that 49ers offensive line is going to go in a negative direction and not a positive direction. If Kinlaw doesn't show up, does it derail the total defensive line? No, it doesn't, because they've got so many other guys there, and they win there with strength in numbers, right? If Banks doesn't show up this year, I think the 49ers have real problems. But if Kinlaw doesn't, I think they can get through it on the defensive line. So I would say bigger eyeball scrutiny go on Aaron Banks. If Jimmy Garoppolo is on the roster after cut day, the 49ers will owe him his $24.2 million base salary guaranteed for 2022. It's not guaranteed right now. But as a vested veteran, if Garoppolo makes the 53-man roster, the 49ers will owe him all that money. And therefore, they won't be able to carry over those $24.2 million in savings to the 2023 season, where I think they really want that money. So I find it highly unlikely that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be on the roster after cut day. But there are ways that he can be on that roster potentially. A, if Trey Lance gets hurt this offseason. Trey Lance gets hurt this offseason, obviously you want to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the football team. B, if Trey Lance implodes this offseason. I don't think that's going to happen. I thought the 49ers should have drafted Trey Lance because I like his mental makeup. Obviously, everybody likes the physical skills, but I don't think he's going to implode. I think he's going to embrace this opportunity and move forward. But if he completely implodes, if he's, just sitting back there, airmailing everybody, throwing picks left and right, and, not moving the 49ers offense, if he's looking like he did as a rookie, if there hasn't been, that marked leap from last season's training camp to this season's training camp, Well, yes. Then if you're Kyle Shanahan, you sit back and say, well, we got a roster that's ready to win now. Why get rid of this quarterback that can win with this roster? I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think it's way more likely that Trey Lance looks fine. Trey Lance continues progressing the way that he has been and looks good this offseason. And the 49ers want to save the $24.2 million so they can carry it over into the future. So you don't want Jimmy Garoppolo's money to become guaranteed if you are indeed planning to move on from him. And I think that's the most likely course of events moving forward. Does Spencer Burford look like he can make an impact on this team? Well, again, why don't we take a look? Spencer Burford is number 74 when we get to the got to get through the whiteouts first. There he is. Right there on the right. That's Spencer Burford, 49ers. Fourth round pick out of Texas, San Antonio, UTSA. He's going to have a little bit of a look in on the action here. I mean, you could tell Burford got a nice, big, strong lower body. I think he's the most physically developed of the 49ers rookie offensive linemen as far as muscle mass goes. And I think as far as readiness to play right away, I'm not saying he's going to be ready to play right away. I think he's going to need a little bit more strength, especially as he's moving from tackle inside the guard. There you see Burford. I mean, he's wearing Joe Staley's number right now, so he better be ready to do something. But I think Burford is going to be a player that the 49ers rely on sooner rather than later. Yes, they do want him at guard. I think the goal would be for him to displace Daniel Brunskill at guard sooner rather than later at right guard, unless Jalen Moore is able to do something like that. But Moore in his second year, they had him more at tackle last year. I think they want him more at guard this year. We'll see how that competition works out. We'll see how strong Burford truly is once the pads come on. But Banks has had a year in the system, so I say Aaron Banks at left guard, and then you want to improve right guard. And that's why when Burford was drafted and I took my first look at the tape, I said, he's working against a lot worse competition at UTSA than he is going to be working against at the NFL level. Despite that, I thought that he was physically developed enough to potentially make a splash earlier rather than later in his career. They got him in the fourth round, but again, it was a deep draft. Maybe another draft, Spencer Burford goes a little bit sooner just because this draft was exceptional toward its depth. Portola, 45. He saw the Davis-Price interview, likes his makeup. He's going to run over people. Again, everybody right now, subscribe to the channel. We're growing really fast. We're nearing 15K, so do that right now. The like button helps. The subscribe button helps. And the reason I say that is because I put every single rookie interview up on the channel. Put it up there in cinematic mode, too. You guys like the cinematic mode, I know. High-quality camera. So I did the rookies in cinematic mode, at least the second day of rookies in cinematic mode. And Ty Davis-Price was there. People said that they got an intimidating feel from him. And that's exactly what we want. If the guy is 220 pounds and he's running like a freight train downfield, you want him to have an intimidating persona. You don't want him to be, the Pillsbury Doughboy. You want him to be somebody who's going to look a little mean, right? It's going to have that scowl on his face. And Ty Davis-Price, I thought he was giving off that intimidating persona. He likes to play football. He likes to run downhill. And I think that you're right onto something when you say that that interview, gave you good football guy vibes. I think Ty Davis-Price has football guy vibes. Kenneth Ruloff asks, would you agree that the 49ers special teams got better this year? On paper, it absolutely got better. They replaced Richard Hightower, the coordinator. So, I mean, that was people's biggest complaint, I thought, last year. They didn't think the 49ers were ready schematically on, some important plays. They replaced him with Brian Schneider, who was the Seattle coordinator, special teams for nearly a decade. Early on in his time with Seattle, Brian Schneider with the Legion of Boom, those were good special teams units. And they used big time players on special teams because they're on rookie contracts. And Richard Sherman, obviously, still remember him blocking a kick against the 49ers. I mean, those were impressive units. Brian Schneider schemed them up. He's got a track record of being able to take deep rosters and produce good special teams units. So we'll see if he's able to do that with the 49ers, but that's upgrade one. And then they went out and they started signing guys that were, known specialists, right? George Odom, safety from the Indianapolis Colts, led the league in special teams tackles past couple years. Ray McLeod led the league in punt return average last season. Former Steelers kind of, I view, he's 5'9", so he's a shutter bug, right? He's a guy that's going to be good in the return game. And the 49ers were dead last in the return game, at least in the kick return game last year. Oren Burks, the linebacker from the Packers, that was a bad special teams unit in Green Bay, but Oren Burks was the best player there. He's going to be a good guy tackling, moving in the open field. So the 49ers have good specialists now, I think, that they didn't have last season. And they also have a new proven special teams coach. So on paper, the special teams unit should be better than it was in 2021, and it's going to have to be better because I talk about the formula for the 49ers to succeed in the 2022 season. And the offense carried the way for much of 2021. The defense turned it up late, right? But it was the offense that carried the way early for the 49ers, and both units had to overcome atrocious special teams play. So if you assume that Trey Lance is going to have some growing pains as the 49ers starting quarterback in this 2022 season, as I think is totally reasonable. You could love Trey, anyone, but you could still admit that he's probably growing pains. If that's going to be the case, you're going to want the 49ers defense, which is deeper than it was last season, and their special teams, which is on paper better than it was last season, to carry some of the weight to give Trey Lance runway to develop, right? And then by the end of the year, you can have balance. By the end of the year, Trey and on offense could be firing. The defense could still be firing, if assuming it stays healthy, and the special teams could just not screw things up. So I think it's really important for the 49ers special teams to do its part in this 2022 season. Keep grinding away with the quality content and watch your numbers soar. 30K by October. Now, the way I understand, I really appreciate that. Thank you. So everybody, like and subscribe. You can help. You could be part of the growing channel if you do that. What I noticed is that this is exponential. It was a hard pull to get to 1,000 to 2,000. Then it gets a little bit easier. We hit a little bit of a stall in fall when the 49ers weren't playing well. Everybody was sick of it. Then they start surging. And then everybody's like, oh, yeah, I like this. I'm going to subscribe. I like this content. It was big when I was in Dallas and I filmed Super Gremlin, right, when they came out of the locker room. That's been the most watched video. Mike has the numbers on that. I could look it up later, but appreciate you. Let's get those numbers up. I love it. And hey, everybody subscribe to The Athletic. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here. I want to get this. There we go. There's the article. This is from Rookie Minicamp. I didn't have a chance to put this up yesterday because I just did the live from my phone. So this is 49ers Rookie Minicamp. Danny Gray, Brock Purdy, Ty Davis-Price on display. It is now in the chat section. I'll put it in the comment section. It's $1 a month right now for The Athletic. So the way this works is that I have a lot of written content. We go more in depth than anybody. Matt Barrows and I'm sure you know him, on The Athletic. And then what I do to supplement that, to kind of promote a lot of our articles and talk football with you, interact with you, are these videos. So the best you can do is like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and obviously go and check out the link in the comment section. That in the chat section as well. That is the article on The Athletic. All right, let's answer some more questions. The Lombardi squad represent. Hell yeah, I like that. All right, guys. Seriously, I need more questions. I want to pump out some more content. I mean, we could do this. We could take another look at the rookies, right? Those of you in the Central Valley, I'm going to be on the news tonight, so be sure to watch that. Take a look at Brock Purdy. Now, there was some talk that Brock Purdy, doesn't have a strong arm or something like that. Watch the tape on Brock Purdy. His arm at Iowa State was fine. I'm going to replay the Brock Purdy stuff. And B, what the hell are you supposed to tell from a rookie minicamp? He's throwing 5-yard out patterns. There were a couple passes that he lofted a little bit deeper. Danny Gray ran one down for Manny Wilkins, who actually was the other quarterback that was there. Manny Wilkins Jr., Arizona State, Packers practice squad in 2019. They needed 2 QBs for the event. But look at Davis-Price, by the way, 32. He's getting up there near 220 pounds again. He's going to catch this poor pass from Anthony Lynn. But as far as judging arm strength of a quarterback, and yeah, there were a couple passes with some nice zip from Purdy. He got one back by Tariq Castro Fields to Danny Gray. It was a little quick out. Danny Gray took off and started running. That was all good stuff. But I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, I can evaluate Brock Purdy's arm strength based on a rookie minicamp workout, which featured 2 defensive linemen. There wasn't even a pass rush. It's about arm strength in context. Can this guy, how strong is his arm when there's a defensive tackle bearing down on him? How strong is his arm when the pocket caves in? How strong is his arm in 11-on-11 situations against the defense? And the only way to be able to make an evaluation on something like that is to actually watch the tape of Brock Purdy in college at Iowa State. And there was some off-platform stuff. There was some core throws, really using that torso without getting a whole lot of lower body into it because he couldn't, that were impressive. And at the end of the day, the 49ers picked Brock Purdy in the final slot of the 2022 NFL draft. I mean, he was a pick away from being an undrafted free agent. So let's also not pretend that he's going to have a rocket like a Trey Lance, who was picked number 3 overall. Brock Purdy was picked 259 spots later, number 262 overall in a different draft, obviously. So the 49ers picked Purdy because they like the way that he plays the quarterback position. They really liked how he manipulated defenses with his eyes, how he was able to change plays at the line of scrimmage, how he was able to implement pocket broke down at Iowa State, and how he was a gamer. He led some comebacks there for the Cyclones. It's a cool mascot, by the way, the Cyclones. He did good stuff for Iowa State. He was a player that had the moxie that the 49ers liked, and they got him for the number 262 pick of the draft. This wasn't valuable draft capital. This was Mr. Irrelevant, literally the final pick of the entire NFL draft. And based on what I've seen on tape, he can play, and he can play the quarterback position, and that's all that really matters. So let's not pretend that we can glean more from a rookie minicamp with 2 defensive linemen, so the 49ers didn't even have a pass rush, than we can actually glean. And that's what I promise you, those of you who are new to this channel. I'm gonna tell things how they are, and I'm not gonna try to have a take just to have a take. So sub and like the channel, and I appreciate all the support. David's the best take on why Jimmy's still on the roster. Free insurance with no risk. Absolutely. Right. I mean, right now there's like negative risk almost, because if you let Jimmy Garoppolo go, you have to pay. You have to pay to release him. $7.5 million. Why would you do that? He cannot pass a physical until he could throw a football, period. He's guaranteed $7.5 million for injury. Having Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster right now is an absolute no-lose situation for the 49ers. There is no downside, period. People who say that there's a downside are making up the downside. But, you're again, I've said this before, facts over feelings. Your feelings about Jimmy Garoppolo do not change the facts of the situation. The facts of the situation are that Garoppolo's not owed any money until if and when he makes the 53-man roster. And nobody's saying that it's likely that he's going to make the 53-man roster. So for now, all that you stand to benefit from releasing Jimmy Garoppolo is a loss in that the Seahawks pick him up and the Seahawks get your playbook. And I mean, it's absolutely absurd to think that somebody would think there's a benefit to releasing Jimmy Garoppolo right now. You can also wait out the situation and see what kind of trade return you get when he is healthy. So I think it's as simple as that. I think people overcomplicate this way too much. Thankfully, the 49ers aren't overcomplicating it. Thankfully, the 49ers aren't listening to the advice that might be coming across social media. Azeez Al-Shire and Dre Greenlaw are both unrestricted free agents in 2023. Which one to keep and why? That's a great question from Mr. Corey, because they probably won't be able to keep both of them. So this is going to be an audition year for both Greenlaw and Al-Shire to see which one the 49ers keep. I think both of these guys are going to earn significant cash from somebody in 2023. So the 49ers need to figure out who fits best into the system. And they also, this is why they signed Jeremiah Gemmel, linebacker out of North Carolina, undrafted free agent, because those linebackers, and another guy you should watch is Segun Olubi. Segun Olubi was Drake Jackson's high school teammate at Corona Centennial in Southern California. They went to San Diego State. Between Olubi and Jeremiah Gemmel, the 49ers have 2 really good-looking linebackers who Olubi's fast, by the way. Gemmel's kind of a captain. They called him the general at North Carolina. Both of these players are candidates that are going to be essentially undergoing a year-long tryout with the 49ers to see, who's going to fill into that third linebacker spot. Or is it going to be somebody like Demetrius Flanagan-Foles come 2023? Because it's going to be hard to keep both Al-Shire and Dre Greenlaw. I don't know the answer to your question. That's why I think it's a good question. But that's something that you should be watching over the course of this season. Because over the course of this season, the 49ers are going to determine who it is they're going to pay in all likelihood, either Greenlaw or Alshire. Yep, I didn't forget Flanagan Foles. I mentioned him. Having good depth at the QB position is not a problem. Thank you, Kenneth. Everybody wants more depth at O-line. Everybody wants more depth at D-line. Everybody's happy the 49ers have Alshire and Dre Greenlaw at linebacker. Everybody's happy that the 49ers signed Jason Verrett, so they have a crowd in the cornerback room. So why wouldn't you want to have depth at the most important position? The only reason that teams are often not able to find their preferred depth at the most important position, QB, is because they can't pay for it. But the 49ers can currently pay for it because Jimmy's not owed any money until, if and when, he makes the 53-man roster. So yes, having good depth at QB is definitely not a problem. It's a problem for people on Twitter, personal office, or with Jimmy Garoppolo. But sorry, they don't know you. They don't care that you have a personal axe to grind. They're not going to run their business decisions based on your personal feelings. They're going to run their business decisions based on what's best for the football team. And having a deep QB position at no downside is best for the football team. Thank you, Josh. Any thoughts on the new coaches? Brian Griese is really interesting to me because he doesn't have coaching experience, but he's got very applicable playing experience, right? Brian Griese was drafted by Mike Shanahan into this system, Kyle Shanahan's system, at a time when John Elway still had a year to go. So he got to learn for a year under one of the greats, John Elway. And there's two things. He got to learn under Elway, which was like Lance. He got to learn under Garoppolo, right? Somebody who knows the system really well. But B, when Trey Lance was drafted, and even before he was drafted, I said that the 49ers were going to draft Trey Lance because the Shanahan coaching history features the ultimate dual threat quarterbacks. And that is Steve Young, who Mike Shanahan coached with the 49ers as the offensive coordinator from 92 to 94. And then there was John Elway, with whom Mike Shanahan won 2 Super Bowls as head coach of the Denver Broncos. If there was a perfect marriage or an ideal marriage of pocket passing precision and mobility to be able to add a new dimension for the offense to stretch opposing defenses, it was Steve Young and it was John Elway within the context of the Kyle Shanahan system. That was the prototype, those two right there. So before and after the 49ers drafted Trey Lance, I always talked about Elway as the Lance model. And it just so happens that Brian Griese, new 49ers quarterbacks coach, was drafted with John Elway still on the Broncos roster. So he got to see the prototype in his final season in person. He got to learn from the prototype, and he obviously then got to start for Mike Shanahan. And then obviously he knew Kyle Shanahan at a later date, and now he's the 49ers quarterbacks coach. So although Griese doesn't have actual coaching experience, he does have the experience of being brought up in that Shanahan mold through many coincidences that make his connection to Trey Lance, I think, an apt and unique one. On top of that, Brian Griese was the Monday Night Football commentator, so he got to travel around the league, talk to coaching staffs in preparation for the television production. And because of that, I think he's fairly plugged in with what the league is running right now. Now, the fact that Griese is the quarterback's coach doesn't mean that he's going to be involved in all too many things schematically. The 49ers also have Bobby Slowick, who's their pass game coordinator, who's already worked with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, who's going to be also working with the quarterbacks. And they have Kyle Shanahan, who's also going to be working with the quarterbacks. And they have Anthony Lynn, who obviously will probably share his 2 cents as well. So the fact that the 49ers have a village kind of to raise the quarterback, so to speak, in this situation, that's really intriguing to me. And I love the unique background that Brian Griese brings, and I'm fascinated to see if it's going to work. I know the 49ers are excited about it. Shanahan himself has said that he thinks that the coaching staff can reach its players in new and more effective ways than it did last season. And that's an example of why, that whole lineage that I was talking about with Brian Griese. And then Anthony Lynn, the guy used to be a head coach. He's going to be working with the running backs. You never want to lose Bobby Turner. But if there's somebody that might be able to replace Bobby Turner, I think Anthony Lynn, schematic mastermind of the run game, right, is going to be a big one. I think the 49ers are going to run more inside zone, more gap scheme. I mean, Anthony Lynn is a power run game coordinator. Look at his history. He can run the power run game. 49ers have some bigger linemen now than they did in the past, and they have a bigger back in Ty Davis-Price than they did in the past. Any news on the date that Frank Gore will retire a 49er? Nope. And I would expect that to be sometime in the preseason, right? Maybe sometime when there's a little bit more shine, because the 49ers want to give want to give Frank Gore that shine. All right, guys, you guys just heard the doorbell ring. That means I have to get going. I have something to tend to over here. So we've wrapped up the 49ers busy draft season. The schedule's out. Rookie minicamp is over. Fred Warner is confident that Deebo Samuel will sign a new deal with the 49ers. And most importantly, subscribe to David Lombardi's YouTube. Subscribe, hit that like button, and also subscribe to The Athletic. In the comment section, you will see that $1 a month deal to the latest article. All right, appreciate you all. Let's talk soon. It's been a good Sunday show. Why don't you go out there, enjoy your Sundays, because we have a weekend without football, and maybe we should enjoy that. There's up to be a weekends with football coming in just a few months. All right, everybody, take care. It's been a pleasure. Bye.